So there's recently been some developments in the US trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government and possibly bomb and or invade Venezuela thing. On the 10th of December, the US seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, which was shipping oil from Venezuela to Cuba. And this is obviously a just brazen act of piracy. It doesn't matter who the US sanctions or what they think is right or wrong. You know, they don't just have the right to seize whatever ship they see fit. American law is not world law. This is part of a long-standing strategy of the US in which they try to put pressure on both the Cuban government and the Venezuelan government at the same time. On the Venezuelan government by impeding their ability to export oil, which they make a lot of money from. You know, they really need that to keep their government and their state afloat at all. And on the Cuban government, which relies pretty much entirely on Venezuelan oil for its petroleum-based energy needs. So Trump said about this that the US has seized a very large oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. He said, as you probably know, we have just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large, the largest one ever seized actually. He says if this is like something praiseworthy, I guess. It was seized for a very good reason. Jesus Christ. And US Attorney General Pam Bondi said, for multiple years, the oil tanker has been sanctioned by the United States due to its involvement in illicit shipping networks supporting foreign terrorist organizations. Now, as I said, it doesn't fucking matter if the US sanctions you. American law isn't world law. But then at the end of the day, the US has the fucking military, particularly in this region. So, yeah, ultimately, if they want to like send their military to just fucking brazenly do imperialism against other countries, they can do that, and you can't really do much to retaliate, especially in this day and age, where they can just use like computer-guided air power, a lot of it unmanned, to just basically kill whoever and blow up whatever they want, like at any time. Like, what the fuck can you do? Trump signaled the US would keep the seized oil, literally just stealing it. We keep it, I guess, he said. This might backfire though, as oil prices immediately jumped by 1% upon the news of this, so if they keep doing it, it might like raise global oil prices and end up like hurting the American domestic economy. Which would be a decent enough backfire. I do think this, in a way, is actually a de-escalation though. Because one, this actually isn't anything new, this has happened before. Back in 2020, that was being shipped from Iran to Venezuela. From 6 separate ships, they seized the cargo. They didn't seize the ships themselves, they did seize the cargo. So yeah, this is nothing particularly new. Now, I do think this is something of a de-escalation from what they seemed primed to do earlier, paradoxically weird as it may seem for me to say, because previously it was looking like they're going to bomb Venezuela or they might outright invade it, and then nothing happened. Even though at the time it was being reported in the media that Trump had supposedly given Maduro an ultimatum to step down, or the US would attack or invade or something, and then they never did that. So it seems to me like the US government has sort of decided to go for something that is, at the very least, not as bad as an invasion or like bombing Venezuela or something, to try and, like, I don't know, like attack Venezuela in some way without like actually attacking and like starting a literal war. So yeah, this is brazen high seas piracy. It's bipartisan brazen high seas piracy as well. The Democrats barely said a whimper about this. There was like 1 or 2 of them who made statements about it. But the rest of them are largely silent. Pro-Democrat news anchors and such are largely justifying this. Because ultimately, when it comes to Venezuela, the Democrats and the Republicans are largely unified on their policy goals. You know, they want to overthrow Maduro and replace him with, right now, their candidate for that is Maria Corina Machado, someone who has just openly said that she just wants to sell off pretty much the entire Venezuelan economy to the USA. I mean, she said outright, like, her vision for Venezuela is that it will sell off over 500 companies, privatize them, sell them to like the US and stuff, like as like a literal like just garage sale of like the entire Venezuelan country to the USA. That's her goal. Not exactly subtle about it. And you know, I went over this like a month ago when it first happened, but she was given the Nobel Peace Prize. Who the fuck knows for what? It's not like she's done anything worthy of that. And now, much to the discredit of Maduro, I should say, because the fact that Maduro lets these people travel instead of just locking them in a fucking dungeon is bad, as far as I'm concerned. But she showed up in Europe, where's the Nobel Prize? Isn't it Sweden? Sweden, I guess. So she showed up in Sweden to like finally belatedly receive her Nobel Prize in person and give a speech and stuff, joke as that is. And it was already obvious that this whole thing of giving her the Nobel Prize is just a total joke. It's obvious that the Nobel Prize is a political organization. They give these prizes out to try and like boost certain people, to boost the profile of people who are like seen as useful Western imperialism and stuff like that. And in this case, it could not be more obvious. It was already obvious before, but now the Nobel Prize chair, the chair of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, outright went on stage after Machado gave her speech and took just an open political stance, saying, Mr. Maduro, step down, accept the election results and step down. Lay the foundation for a peaceful transition to democracy because that is the will of the Venezuelan people. So yeah, this really couldn't be much more of a joke, could it? So I will say the oil tanker thing, obviously it's a brazen international crime, brazen theft, brazen piracy. I really hope that the usual suspects, my colleagues on the YouTube platform in the supposedly left-wing political commentary space are calling that out. They certainly wouldn't do it if Biden was doing it, but maybe now that Trump is doing it, they will. But there's not really much that Venezuela can do about it. All of this really depends on what the US is willing to do, how far they are willing to go. And thus far, weirdly as it may be to hear this, for me to say this, because, they still seized the fucking oil tanker, just brazenly just stole its cargo. Ultimately, it indicates a bit of a de-escalation from what Washington seemed to be indicating that they were looking to do before. So there is at least that. So yeah, obviously this sucks. The US is stuck in like this bipartisan attack on Venezuela. I mean, they've been doing this literally since Chavez was elected for the first time. The US government has just non-stop, from Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden, and now back to Trump, been trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government. So that's not really anything new, though. Them literally like brazenly and openly bombing or even invading Venezuela, that would be new. And as I said in my last video, the very fact that there is even a slight possibility of this happening remaining means that Americans need to meet the moment and get out there and protest against this, because your government is potentially on the brink of starting another Iraq war soon. We're not exactly out of the woods yet. Who knows what they might do in the future? And people really are not rising to the occasion, are they? Kind of seems like everyone's just sleepwalking into this, which, does make it good that the US government appears to be backing off from its original, much worse goal of outright bombing or invading Venezuela by just seizing an oil tanker. But, that's just what it seems like. I could be wrong about that. They could still want to bomb Venezuela. They could still want to invade Venezuela. Who knows? And until we're completely out of the woods on that front, I think there's a lot of work to be done. So anyway, yeah, that's all I want to talk about. Bye.